Yeah, so I've been just in my personal channeling, higher self session just now. And so what came through was like, oh, wait a minute. I really want to make a video about this, even if it's just, a short little segment. But so it's about the solar flash. Okay, I'm just gonna give it over to my higher self, and yeah. So, and okay, so this came about again because of a series of dreams that I had, and I have to. I'm gonna repeat them to because these are images, these are themes that are collective, and they're coming through, showing us something about this time that is on a collective scale, and then how it translates into on each's individual level. And but then it is about the solar flash, and then that's a very collective event, and then we have that on a fractalized miniature or micro level. Individually in our lives we have our solar flash as well. um, so these dreams were, the theme was the recurring, and then this is recurring, 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 until the last dream was the solution dream. So just like I've shared that I had the tsunami dreams over and over, running away from this huge wave in panic, until I realized, there's no point. Why do I even run away? It's going to catch me anyway. It's so big. So why not die consciously? That was like the inner guidance that came, that inner knowing and wisdom, like my higher self that came through and said, die consciously, turn around, and you know open up to the wave, die consciously, it's gonna take you anyways. And when I did that, in the next time that it came around, that was the last time I had a, no, it's not the last time I had a tsunami dream, but it was the last time I had the kind of tsunami dream where I was afraid of it, where I was running away. That completely shifted after that dream. Um, and I faced it, and it, I faced my death. So that is like total surrender, total surrender. And then it did wash over me. I was underwater. I opened my eyes. I was alive. And I realized I could breathe. I could breathe underwater. I wasn't dead. I didn't die. And in that same dream, um, I also came back out of the water. And then I saw another tidal wave that was also like that big, but it was thin. So, and the sun was shining through the wave. So it was like rising high, high, high. And then I could also see that it didn't have the dynamic of what we know as the waves in the ocean, that every wave that goes up, it then also crashes in a very um, physicality. You can, it has a certain uh, law to it. And this law didn't apply after I had died, or not died, after I had let the wave wash over me. The second wave that came, I could see that this wave is alive and conscious, and that it wouldn't crash over me. And that it also was a wave where, it had a different law. It wasn't gonna, it was like standing, it was like a standing wave. And it could also go back down again like this. It didn't have to crash over and have this like destructive effect on those that, or everything that wasn't surrendered. Um, and so the sun was shining through. It was this beautiful turquoise water, and in that wave, almost like in a fish tank, right? Except in the wave, no walls. There was a dolphin swimming, and then there was an ancient, very ancient, ancient creature. It wasn't Loch Ness It wasn't that creature. It was a seahorse. Exactly. It was an old, huge seahorse. It wasn't a whale. It wasn't a dolphin. So a creature that had long ago, was went extinct. And I was the, I was like in wonder, in like awe and wonder, and it was a feeling of magic, and it was a feeling of just, it was magical. So magic had returned, and so I got that also this morning. A lot of dots were coming together. The second, so after that, no more. Then the tsunami dreams were completely different, and not anymore anything to be afraid of, or yeah. Um, the second theme that ties into that was, I have to get I have to pack my stuff, but I can only take what I can carry, and I have to catch a train. And it was never conscious of where that train would take me. But it was always, that train was leaving at a time and I needed to catch it. So I was always pressured for time, and in that pressure, I had to discern what comes and what goes. And I always had too much to carry, and that was the problem. Pressured for time, always running late, and can't carry everything, but like always trying to bring everything along, trying to carry everything, and that was like this whole stressful dream. And the last time I had that dream, which was the solution, was that on my way to this train station, which I was probably way too late for anyways, but I was still trying to catch this train, and I had tried the whole dream to get all my papers together, my documents. It was about documents that I needed to take with me, and that didn't work out either. And then, driving to the train station, what happened was the road gave in and there was a lake, and my car was sucked into the lake, and then me too, and I was sucked into the lake. And in that moment, when my car went into the lake, and me then with it, and there was a group of people, like school group, a little bit ahead, and then they watched me later. They watched me sink into the lake. In that moment, like boom, the surrender came. I was like, oh, I give up. Oh, okay, I have to give up. I mean, that dream is dying, There is nothing to do there anymore. There's nothing I can do anymore. That dream is like being dissolved out of me, like ripped out of me. It's like there's nothing I can hold. I can't hold on anymore. And, and it was like I knew I was. Okay, so the school group that was watching me sink into the lake, I knew that they thought I was dying. I was drowning. But I wasn't drowning, and I knew that I'm dying to this dream, and I'm going to another one. Yeah, there was no feeling of death or fear or anything. And it was the opposite. It was finally the moment I was drawn into the lake, it was relief. Again, it was relief. Yes. So now we're at that point with relief. That was the key word. Yes, and the death is the death of the old self. It's the death of that self that was always trying to achieve and adapt, and that was still running on the old programs. That's really what it is. It's the self that has been, so the soul consciousness that was asleep, and that was running and asleep to a dream that was being shaped by all the programs of what we call egoic mind, which is the mind of separation from soul, of that um, not unity consciousness. Because when you have the sense of separation from your soul, that is also the sense of separation from God, and it's the sense of separation from everybody else and from, oh, okay. Yeah, no, I'm gonna do this. And from life itself. And from life itself. And with that, that is the basis. That is what it's like the code that enables the hosting of fear. That's so, and all the negative emotion come negative because it's divided from self. And fear is the base sound of it. Okay? And that's what's going. And how does this tie into the solar flash? So, okay. Pressured for time. Mm. Yes. So, in that the first dream that I had with the that kicked all the others off until the solution came. Yeah, with this packing, getting the stuff, and what it is that the only thing that we can take with us into the ascension, yes, into the higher dimension, is our true self. And the true self is, um, that is what comes through the quality, the flavor, the geometry, the sound symphony. It's what comes through when our filter is clear, when the mind is clear, and the emotions then are cleared. And a clear mind is an aware mind, an awake mind, a conscious mind. To clear the programs is to become aware of them. That's what clears them. That's what takes the power back. And they lose and lose and lose power. We no longer entertain them as truth. We notice when they come and, oh, that's that pattern and it comes from that conditioning. But it's not who I am. It's not my truth. It doesn't resonate anymore, and I'm not a slave to it anymore. It doesn't just have me, hijacked. Hasn't it doesn't hold power over me anymore. It doesn't make me fall asleep to it anymore. And of course, when I say anymore, this is a process. But within the process, when these aspects show up that are still in the egoic mind and still asleep, there's so much of us and ever more of ourselves that notices it. So we're still playing it out, but we're like, the observer is there, and they feel more, and the repercussions, they're getting greater and greater. So as we're getting more and more sensitive, as we're getting more and more aware and awake, and running more of our, more soul currents than egoic currents, and the egoic currents are in resistance to the soul currents, and even some of them may even be, because the resistant currents, at the core of them, they have an inverted um, torus, and an inverted spin, like that. The first vortex, that it pulls into the opposite direction of life and of light. It pulls light out. That's like a black hole. Um, but it pulls it, yeah, into a lower dimension. Exactly. It pulls it into a lower dimension, into a denser dimension where there's more fear. And that's, the basis of all negative emotion is fear. So it's like that it's like that one tiny torus that that causes that's in the opposite spin, that pulls it into the lower dimension because it's so dense, that impact, that imprint, that conditioning, that belief about ourselves and the world is so divided from God and itself that it's in the inversion, and it makes everything that's attached to it, that may not, it may not the whole vortex, it may not be a big vortex, a big spin, how much percent in the opposite direction, but it is resistant. It is slower. It's slow, 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 and resistant then when in the interfacing with the soul stream. It doesn't flow with the soul stream. It's not harmonious and coherent. That also means it's not yet heart coherent. It doesn't flow harmonious with the soul stream. Okay, let's go back to the first time that kicked off this dream about getting all my stuff together. And I'm sharing this. I'm moved to share this because I know these are images of the energies that are collectively happening. In that one, I managed to sort, have a bag ready, and then in the end, I was pressured for time. Oh, I have to leave, but I found my shoes, I grabbed my bag, and I was okay with what I had to leave, so everything was sorted. And the moment I stepped outside of the building that I was in, it was about leaving into a new, leaving everything behind, and leaving into the unknown. Really, it was that, but a new life and the unknown. For the first time in my life, and I woke up, after that. I had, so I felt my heart chakra. I really felt my heart chakra, and it was like what you would call an orgasm. It was the same sensation, because what that really means, that word is actually, or a climax, which only means the highest point. So what it really means is that, and I can, but I don't want to go there now, but there are, this is science. This is also Dan Winter's science of, and maybe I will relay that in another video with images, how this looks and what the science of it is. So it was like it pulsed. It was like it had, I could viscerally feel it. It had a life of its own. It was like alive and had a life of its own, and it was pulsing, 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 like releasing, releasing, releasing. And then I have been getting this many years back already. I intuitively got something about that this was what was going on in our solar system, in the universe, the principle of this climax of a torus field. And that is when it's full. When it's full, but all the waves are aligning, all the waves are embedded. So, okay, slow down. I'd rather have my higher self now take over again, but I need to put this, I don't know why, but I need to put this here. Okay. I'd rather have you take over now, like you described it before to me. So the solar flash is like a heart orgasm. Yes, it is the same thing happening. Yes. And it is it will be triggered by our waves of the heart. So when a certain percentage, and Ismael Perez says 10%, when a certain percentage of humanity has a certain percentage of heart opening, so you could say that they came into the grace of God. And this is, this is what's coming through, is that this is when something else comes alive. So when the divine takes over, that is when a higher order takes over. And then what is in the lower order, that is the grace of God, through the grace of God, what is in the lower order becomes aligned, and that there is a release. So what were you also saying? Amanashturu ukna ivi naharlikia tana uriki tana shtuku uri. Jabra magna yeto hannia tuya paknia tura. Jovra amharlia kiatanu jorla pan uri kiata ta 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 ta. Ejevre mahatuku ushtana yetiatara. Barakdara no urupuktani tiaru kutushtana yapeata. Jivra ama arikiatanu u. Yeah, there is still a lot of insecurity within you to talk about this, and that's why it's a little bit, we're here on a little bit of shaky ground, but so when individually there are, let's say 10%, a percentage like 10% of humanity that individually they have their own solar flash. And what does that mean? That is the heart structure, the heart vortex has come to this maximum, and it is when you have cleared your emotions, you have received back your emotions into your heart, as we described so many times before. You have awakened in your mind to yourself, to your true self. So you are no longer a slave to your egoic mind programming. If it does show up, you're the observer of it, you're the space for it. It has no more power over you. So this allows for, so there's no more this pushing on the brakes of the, and pulling, and slowing down your spin. So you have released back into all your circuitry. You have released these resistant spins, and the core of it, which was the inverted spin, also is taken back home. So that all of that which was being held away, split off from your soul stream, all that split off energy, which is not streamlined. And we've been saying you need to get streamlined. We are coming into the rapids now. This is on an individual level. And when a certain amount of people have gone through that, it will happen on a collective level. This is what we want to now describe. And it's being described through, this body, mind, soul complex, and how much she has already, she can grasp it. But this is not something this is not an explanation, even though all of this could be also explained, scientifically also with Dan Winter's science and all of this, which would be also fascinating, and we might get to that. But now it's an exploration, and it's an intuitive relay and an intuitive getting of it on a, and putting the dots together on a greater scale. And so yes, so we have said you are now coming into the white waters, into the rapids, and you can feel that. And what that means is that whatever concessions you are still making to your old self, you are still making to this inverted programming, this egoic mind programming, where you are held apart from your true self, and where you are acting, pretending not to be yourself, acting through a mask, acting through a costume, acting through, we call it identity, that is not you, that has been conditioned, and that does not fit through the tunnel into the higher vibrations. But what happens now, being in the rapids, it's like we're being sucked in. The image comes of 1899 standing on the ship, the tidal waves, 1899, a series, the tidal waves, crashing over, and the ship going through a tunnel. And it's okay to say this because there's a picture of it, I think, even on the poster, so it's not too much of a spoiler. But this is just an image of being now in that, it's like the birth canal also, the golden child being ready to be born. But of course, it never happens linearly, because at the same time, we're also first dying. We have to die first before we can go through the birthing canal. But it's also happening at the same time, just like within the chrysalis. This is the time of the chrysalis, where we are wrapping ourselves in the chrysalis. From that moment on, the butterfly is dying. And from that moment on, also, the caterpillar is dying. And from that moment on, where the first caterpillar cell dies, the first butterfly cell is born. And then all the caterpillar cells attack the butterfly cells, and that is the saboteur. That is the saboteur that we had also shared in a previous video, that dream about, where you were a vampire, still going on the vampiristic system, still in the inverted matrix system, where you all live off of each other's energy instead of from your own being. And that is a living of for the giving and not for the taking. For the taking, you're always out to get because you forgot. You are for the getting because you forgot who you are. You have forgotten your wholeness, your unity with God. And fear has crept in, and you are for the getting. And then you are not forgiving. And the forgiving comes by remembering who you are naturally. Then you become giving naturally. It's not anymore a feeling of, I can't forgive, or I don't have enough to give, and I'm not going to have enough. And that fear-based energy is frequency, conditioning, is, that's a certain bandwidth, that's a certain timeline, that's a certain dynamic and feeling and paradigm of being, of having that baseline, and of it's also a magnet, it's also magnetism or electromagnetism, but it also has to do with the magnetism of the Earth's magnetic. See, the Earth has a magnetic sphere, and so has your body, because your body is a fractal of the Earth's body. And that magnetism of holding that kind of like it's a landscape, it's a sphere, it's a space. Yes, it's a space that has a certain feeling. It's a paradigm that has a certain feeling about it. that dissolves and gives way to a whole new paradigm of feeling. Just like you can um, you know the difference between how it feels to be in the waking life and how it feels to be in a dream. That's two different radio stations. That's two different dimensions, two different bandwidths. And then we have within our waking life also how we feel when we are with a certain group of people, when we are in a different place, like when we go travel and we're in a different place. It's like, whoa, totally different paradigm here, and you feel different, and it makes you act different and behave different, and it opens up different codes. It makes you think in different ways. It's because you're in a different magnetosphere, so to speak, or in a different symphony that has now different energies, also of the land code, has now influence on you. Yeah. Yeah, in the rapids, dying. So when enough of your stream that you call soul stream and the circuits also in your body, these are all the energy circuits, all the fluids and the meridians and um, all those energy circuits that also flow into the chakra system. Um, yeah, your energy body, because this does happen first. It's like everything first appears in the finer layers of our being, so in the higher dimensions of our being, and then it trickles down until it manifests in the very deep and physical. And so going through that birth canal, exactly. So what this pulse is, it's also the solar flash is a pulse, is the sun, which is a huge vortex. Huge is like that's how it's just like totally open vortex. It's not solid. It's a vortex. Yeah, it's not solid at all. So although maybe on the third dimension, I guess it looks like it's, I don't know. Yeah, we get these images where it looks like it's all lava, right? So maybe there is, on looking from the third dimension, there is some solidity to it. But even there, we say it's liquid, and at its core, there's still the hugest portal within our solar system. And always the portal, that's where the light comes through, from the highest dimensions. On an individual level, yes. So, yes, that's why the rapids, right? So, what are the rapids? So, the rapids are, um, yeah. So, imagine all that inverted spin that was stepping on the brakes is now has come back into the flow. Yeah, so it's come back into the flow. The flow is unobstructed. Your mind is now aware, clear enough. And again, this is not 100%, but it is always that certain percentage. That it is that certain percentage until what we call, or what has been also termed, the point of no return. Because when you step over that point of that threshold, it becomes a life of its own. And what that is gravity. And Dan Winter I just listened to him yesterday again, how he explains gravity, and that is, that's how gravity is through the vortices. And I've also explained in a former video is how, um, what makes the rivers flow is the vortices within the water, you know, and that's also gravity. And that is when this spin, okay, going over the threshold, when the torus fields, when they're coherent enough, yes, exactly. So there's nothing holding, or nothing, or I don't know about nothing, but not enough is holding them back. Because when that threshold is stepped over, it is, um, okay, so you know when water drains out of water bathtub, goes down a drain, it has this vortex, right? And that you can also see, it's like it accelerates at a certain time. You can, a certain moment, you can see how the spin is accelerated. Yeah, it collapses, everything collapses and falls, but it doesn't fall, it gets sucked in, and that's what so so what happens there? So what happens there is this perfect embeddability that comes through coherence, which means, coherence means that everything is in harmony with each other and aware of each other as one. That's the unity consciousness. There's no more fear, there's no more collision, there's no more collateral. Um, because there is awareness of each other and there is unity consciousness, so it's teamwork, and there is this also, what happens now, we come back to that, to the dreams, is surrender. And that's exactly what happened, you know, with the tsunami dream, surrender. With the dream being drawn into the lake, surrender. No more plane or train to catch, you know, no more, nothing to do anymore, nothing to do anymore in this dream. Surrender, you know. Oh, and within that, where I said that kicked off the dream with the fear of not being able to catch the train and get my stuff, because the first one was successful. So it's like the first one where I had the heart orgasm and I woke up and it was, my heart was beating and pulsing, and it was really, I can only say it was the most amazing, or maybe one of the most amazing feelings I have ever had, but definitely surpasses anything like that we, you know, that is so out of the ordinary. And it's just, yeah, it is such a grace. It's full of grace. It's feels so unbelievable, feels so good, and so healing. Yes, it's ultimately healing. Exactly. So, you know, and this just happened to me once, and absolutely not induced or anything, you know, just, yeah, it just happened. Um, um, and okay, why did I say this? The collapsing, the perfect embedding, exactly, because there is no more friction. Ah, there's no more friction, and so the acceleration of that gravity, of that which is pulling into, and what is it pulling into? You know, it's the vortex. So it's pulling down, and it has this cone, right? It has this cone. And also think about the birth canal, but think about the cone, and think about, and I'm gonna do a video, I promise. I'm gonna do a video where I can show these images, but that's after I've first brought it out, because I'm talking about this now to this degree for the first time, and I wanted to record it and so I can share it. Um, yeah, think about the how a torus field looks, you know, the donut and the number 8, the figure 8. How the spin is, the top spin this, the bottom spin the opposite direction, and how the flow is. And when we say energy flow, it's again tiny little toruses that are taking those trails, that are running the currents, just like water. Water every single drop of water is this crystalline, right? It has a crystalline structure of its own. It's one, hexagonal structure. It's always one structure unless the water is so, dead and so toxic that the structure has already been destroyed, and it's not even, doesn't have a hexagonal structure anymore and cannot hold any light. That's the thing. When the structure is destroyed, um, and distorted, it cannot hold any light, and then it like dies. But it can never really die. Water can never really die. It can just become stagnant, foul, toxic, poisoned, and poison everything that's in it and around it. But it can be healed when it's cleared, and then it's back to water. Water has its phases of liquid, gaseous, and frozen. And I'm sure there's a fourth phase of water. I'm sure there is, and I'm just not, plasma maybe. So, and also, interesting, Dan Winter also says that it is hydrogen that causes gravity. And hydrogen, so water is actually H2O, which means two hydrogen and one oxygen. And I don't know what the name for it is. What is it? It's not a molecule, but I don't know the name. So two hydrogen, one oxygen. That's what water is. So it is the hydrogen within the water that um, that causes gravity. And it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Hydrogen. We can take water out of the air, even in the deserts. That we already have that technology. It's already in place in some places. Um, am I still recording? Woo. Yeah. Okay. Good. Um, so when that perfect coherence is there, yeah. So the cone, yeah, and what it does is it sucks it into the 0 point, and the 0 point is sucking it in. And then, you see the water going down the drain. Yeah, that's that vortex. That's also the vortex in every tornado. And this is also what, when a baby is born, what also happens. And that's, here's the other thing. We have been conditioned to believe that childbirth is not only dangerous but also painful. That it's, yep, that's how it is. It's painful. And when I heard, I was maybe 6 years old, and my mom told me exactly how it all works. And I heard that it was terribly painful to bear a child, because you had to, through a tiny, 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 tiny little opening, you had to press a big child. I listened to her and I just thought, within myself, it was like, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that nature would arrange it this way. And I already knew there's something off there. I don't, there must be a different way. It doesn't make sense that childbirth, that nature, as I already said. So and why has it become so painful is because of our conditioning. Yeah, and it's all the resistance. So what is the contractions? What are the contractions? Yeah, it is that uh, it's the other side of the vortex. It's where the push comes, and this is when the body, again, this is the what is that name for when it becomes, it's like you have no more control over it. So surrender has to happen, total surrender, because it's not like, it's as if it wasn't your body anymore. There's nothing you can do about it. It has a life of its own. You know, it has a life of its own. It's kind of, yeah. It's like when you have a twitch. You have a twitch of a nerve or so. You can't make it stop. It has a life of its own. Um, and these are, that is when Oh, when the torus field it becomes a life of its own, when it becomes conscious enough, when the stream is when enough streams are called back home and not away from it anymore, not in the unconscious and working against itself. And so what happens in that heart coherence, or in the coherence of the flow, is that every part, because again, the stream, you have the energy stream or water stream, it's made out of toruses, smaller toruses. And when every one of those toruses finds in the cone, so in that vortex, finds its perfect embedment without any collateral, it just clicks, clicks, clicks. And then acceleration happens. And ever more, ever more, ever more, ever more, ever more acceleration into that 0 point. And the 0 point is, you could call it death. Yes, because when you're coming into the 0 point, it's death. Just like the baby dies to the womb, to that world, and to the consciousness it had in the womb, the moment it gets born, because now the suction, now it's like the pressure, that now it's the time of the birth. It had already died, probably the dying there is probably for the soul until it like locks in completely into the physical body of the fetus or baby. There is that is the where the soul kind of dies to its form and the experience it was as itself in the old, before it was incarnated. So there's that death, and then it gets like comes into the womb, and that's a universe of its own. And then the baby gets pushed out of that universe, it dies to that self, to that the baby in the womb, and becomes impregnated, imprinted into the world. When it comes out into the world, that's the solar chart, that's the not solar chart, that's the astrological chart. So then it becomes imprinted in the physical body when it gets born. But there's always death before birth. So the energies, the toruses, they accelerate into the 0 point. And what is that? What happens is they get compressed. So they come smaller, smaller, smaller. But this compression actually feels really, really, really good. This is the compression into the 0 point, that is the death of the false self, or of the inversion, that is also love, that is also gravity, because there's nothing more in the way. Like Rumi says with love, is that we just need to identify what is in the way of love, what has pushed itself between the sun and us, the clouds, the darkness. That needs to be identified and known to not be us. That's the identification of it. That's not me. That is an imprint. And when that goes away, then the natural architecture is no more obstructed. The 0 point is also that point of total neutrality, and it is the point where the portal opens into, right in the middle of the 0 point, is what they call the singularity. And it really is a okay, this is now more stuff coming together. So as Marina Jacobi puts it, she describes it like the first Taurus that was ever born, and out of that, which is the first heart cell. I'm like taking some of what she says now into, or I am shown, like I'm referred to that, what she says, that little piece of how there is like the first Taurus, the first, I don't know what she calls it, and then that one replicates itself. And that's where the whole universe, all matter in all universes come from. Originally, all universes and all galaxies within all universes, they all come from that one source. Ultimately, they all come from that one source. It's that one torus field at first. It's like with us, all of our body, all of the cells that make up our body, they come out of the first heart cell, the first cell that was created when this body was created in the womb of our mothers. And that cell was a heart cell, the first cell of the heart. And so all of our light that is woven into the DNA of all the other cells that make up the body, it all came through the it's not nucleus, it's called, I don't know what nucleus is, but like the core of the torus field of every atom, is this portal into infinity. I call it infinity, and it is, the highest dimensions of light. So it opens up, and that's where the soul can flow through into the physical. And that's also where then, it keeps going like that throughout all dimensions. That's our multidimensional self. And at some point it loses form. And in a 15-dimensional uh, architecture, let's call it that, conceptual architecture of the universe, or yeah, of the universes, is the last three. The last three are formless. Okay. So in the cone, acceleration, being pulled. And then on the other side, and remember the torus on the one, on the top side spins in one direction. I don't know if it's clockwise. Let's just say it's clockwise. And then it turns. And it's because on the other side, it doesn't get sucked in. It gets pushed out. And that's what Dan Winter calls the squirt gun. And then it gets pushed out on the other side. See, because on this side, it comes in like a cone, and then when it goes through the 0 point, it goes straight out. It gets like shot out in a straight line. And on the other side of the one torus, the lower hemisphere of it, is the same thing. It pulls. It has this vortex that goes like this and pulls from below. So this is also the marriage of earth and heaven, of heaven and earth. So heaven that's the spiritualization of matter. It's also the same thing, but there's always the feedback loop. Matter becomes spiritual, that's the ascension, and spirit becomes matter, which is the descension. And that has nothing to do with the inversion. So this is the architecture of life, and the inversion is that which creates that artificial resistance to life, and that's where all the suffering comes from. Because death, the real death, is very dynamic and is a beautiful part of life. So that is also what the Tibetans understand, amongst many other still connected cultures. But I just heard it about the Tibetans, or saw documentaries on that, how that's part of their culture, is to prepare for death all their life, because they understand how important successful dying is. That's what the successful dying is. And that is what also taking memory through death is. And that is what the Lama, not Lamas maybe, but that's what they're learning. The Lamas are learning that. Um, and what the like Dalai Lamas, Karmapas, Panchen Lamas. So these are like what is the specifics of these? You know, these are just three that I know of. They have mastered the successful dying because, and now we come back to the documentary film that I spoke about the showing the whole process of, and that's how I learned this, of how the 16th Karmapa, he died, and before his death he knew he was going to die. He wrote down, it's like he consciously, and that's what is the specificity, what makes them so special, or what makes them, that what have they mastered to take their memory through death. And they have mastered it. That's why they're called the 17th, the 16th, the 23rd, the whatever, the 7th or so, because since that's how many lives, how many bodies they had, how many reincarnations they had, that they took completely all of their memory of themselves through death. And this is not memory, this is not the egoic mind. So you don't take your ego through death. Although that when you die unsuccessfully, you do, and then you get stuck. That's the thing, okay? That's a whole other story. Okay, but we don't want to go into that story. But that is when your soul essence goes through the other side and gets squirted out. So now think about birth is that squirt gun, right? Is where the body pushes the baby out. That means it already, to its old world, there was that other process of being sucked in and dying. So okay, now we come back to the heart orgasm and the solar flash. So when 10% of us, let's just use that number, and it's totally resonates with me. It's what that 10% is, what Ishmael says. What I'm getting from what my higher self is showing me is that it is when 10% have reached that capacity of heart structure, that the heart, has this heart orgasm. And their heart orgasm, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like I experienced it in my dream when I, was finally free and I finally surrendered everything. Everything went into surrender. It doesn't have to feel that way. There's woo, woo, like one really, really strong, all of a sudden you feel something that you never felt as part of your body before, and it has a total life of its own. It can look and be experienced in a different way. But it's in essence, it is that when that singularity, when everything, okay, so what is that, what is more to this is that the point of singularity is in the middle of the zero, in the middle of the 0 point. And this is also, by the way, time travel, because time travel is time-space travel, and it is also going through a portal. Now we come back to the portals again. That is the science of stargates, because stargates are essentially the chakras of the earth. Our chakras are also stargates because they are connected, like every circuit to our body, and all the chakras in our body are connected also into the celestial bodies in our solar system. And the sun, I say the sun is our heart, because we have a miniature sun, that's where our soul essence flows through in our hearts. And our planet has a sun in its core, in its heart. And that is the portal to infinity. That's the portal to God. That's the portal to back home. And what happens in this like orgasm of that, that climax, is that it opens up. And that doesn't mean that we die and we go back to the highest dimensions and, our soul, the body, the physical body comes back to earth, and our soul is not an individual soul anymore. Now we're just like in this highest dimension as formless energy, light, back there again. No, that's not what that means. It means, however, that we're connected to that again. That the currents coming from there make it through again. And that is what they call the Christ consciousness. So that the Christ, so that portal opens up, and oh God, I got to give this a moment. It's a quite big. The only thing that dies, that has a sense of dying, is the egoic identity. Otherwise, there is no death. And for all that is the awake consciousness in the truth that knows itself, there is no fear, and it's a joyride. And it's transformation. So your energy goes through on one end, and it gets squirted out on the other end, and that is going over no, that's not going over the threshold. The threshold is that is when the point of no return, when you're in that tunnel, when in that vortex like this, when you come over the threshold, woo, then you start to accelerate. Then you start to accelerate into the 0 point. And divine neutrality that I always speak about, divine neutrality, which is this holding space instead of the identification of when you have when negative emotion arises, is to be the space for it. That's the divine neutrality, and that is this Christ consciousness. That then, that where there is the portal in the middle of the heart is open to the degree that there is connection, that there is a feeling of, I am not separate from life. And then we become like the sun. Eventually we become like the sun. We become for the giving. And that is not a want, that is not a struggle. Oh, like it oftentimes we hear this, or I have perceived it like this, like you have to give in order to receive. You have to give at least 10%, otherwise you can't receive. That's all still coming from the conditioned mind, where it's trying to put it into a certain recipe, or a certain calculation. Oh, if you don't do this, then you won't get that. That's not the true forgiveness, because true forgiveness is not something that we can just make that happen like a recipe. Okay, I'm going to forgive, and I'm going to give because I have to also, it's not organic. It needs to come organic and on its own. It comes naturally, and we can trust that. And the way to come into this, into our nature again, and is is through self-love and coming back to loving ourselves. And that is being able to be present with everything, all the moments, and all the feelings that are super unpleasant, where we don't love ourselves, where we are still in resistance, where we are still, stuck in a place. Yeah. Because otherwise, if we are holding space for an emotion, then it doesn't suck us into the inverted spin where we feel it as the identity, and the identity is too tight, you know, and nothing embeds, nothing is harmonious. Everything is fighting against each other. Nothing experiences itself as one, but the opposite. Everyone is a foe. So that's the war against yourself. And then you're in war, and you don't have a space for these intense emotions, and that is suffering, and that is what makes us also want to numb ourselves, and addiction comes from that, because it's very unpleasant. It's very hard to feel that. The solution is to go into the pain and be present with the pain. That will create space for it. That is the divine neutrality, that presence. That is when Christ consciousness can come through, be present, and make space. And then that means that the heart structure opens up, and that current can find its way back into this vortex and be perfectly embedded. And once it comes over the threshold, it has to surrender. Then there's a different, higher power, not force anymore. This is not force. This is a higher power. That is who you are. That's the divine power coming through you. That is then, sucking everything in to the Planck threshold. To the Planck threshold. That means it compresses everything into so small that everything fits. Everything fits into this, through this little portal. But yes, it's perfectly embedded, exactly. And the compression it's not a painful compression at all. Um, I'm just getting, I'm just getting the image of a zip file. And on the other end, where it gets shot out, it gets unpacked, but not in the same way that it was before it went into the vortex. It gets unpacked again, but that's the expansion. That's the expansion. And actually that expansion, okay, this is again what I'm just getting now, that squirting it out, and then the expansion can happen after the compression. Oh, interesting. Oh, yes. I'm getting the image of the teeth with the light codes on the teeth from Suzanne Amara, what she painted, and I'm having, I'm having some toothache at the moment. Yes. Mm. And that's exactly what that does, is the light language, because I made a meditation yesterday going into the pain and bringing the light language came through. And then this morning I was getting from my higher self to actually visualize the light language going into the teeth. And when I was just thinking about that, already the pain was going away. So what light language does also is it brings soul through, and makes space. Yes. And rearrange, reconciles and recalibrates the code. Yes. That's also what your light language does. And my light language, when I speak it and you hear it, is what is inspiring. You can listen to it and you only get the code that is for you, because that is how it comes from unity consciousness. It comes through that 0 point, through the neutrality. Only then can it flow. And I'm not saying it's absolutely pure. There can be some hiccups and still some distortions in there. But it's coming from innocence, and that is totally fine, because the overall is neutral. It's a neutral. There's no thought going on. There's no judgment, no thought. The only thoughts that are coming in while light language is being spoken here is the inspiring thoughts that I'm getting and that I'm also sharing. Then in between, in between the light language, it's my higher self's inspiration that's coming through. And that's all it is it's either going to resonate with you, what doesn't resonate with you. So let's say there would be some hiccups or still distortions coming from the egoic mind from me. That won't even make it. That won't have even an impact on you. The only thing that you will get is what resonates and what is then inspiring your own light language to come through. So, and even if that own light language is not like flowing yet and you're not speaking it yet, it is still activating that code within you, which is a soul code. And you may never actually hear or speak your own light language, but the code is there. The code is there. So that's what my light language does. Okay. Okay. Um, Right. So now what I'm getting, or what I got just now, was that what is the suction and the compression? And the compression, it feels very, very good, because it's almost like it's a collapsing back to the original, that one first, like I said, Marina Jacobi describes it, that first form that was born from the void, like in the beginning there was light. And like in the book, I'm getting all these images now, like in the book, Never Ending Story, my favorite book by Michael Ende, because again, so much code in that book, so much. Yeah. There also, the old world completely died, completely collapsed, and the only thing that was left was one little seed of light. And that was the beginning of the new to be planted, the new world. A new world would spring out of this seed, and of course this seed was a Taurus, So or was a symbol for the Taurus of light, which is the very, very first. That's the essence of all life, So where our soul essence comes through, where we are connected, and where we are then receiving and giving the feedback all the way to the highest dimension, of ourselves, which is the highest Taurus, which is the whole entire universe, and all, all parallel, it's like everything. That's the light. Yeah. What creates the suction is the expansion on the other side. It's because it's one anyways. I mean, you have to see a Taurus. Yeah, okay, so the Taurus, again, how it runs is like this, but then the figure eight. So going into the vortex, coming out again of the vortex this way, and then here coming into the vortex, going out again this way. And that's the shining of the light. And here another image that is coming to me is that I experienced in a dream that I was shot into the heart, and this was absolutely visceral. So I was running away from this person who wanted to kill me, and eventually he did get me. And I had many dreams leading up to that where I always woke up before I was killed. But then again, the last one of these dreams that I had, I was actually killed through a bullet right in the middle of the heart. And I felt it as if it was real. It was so visceral. But I didn't wake up from the pain. I was present with it. I was there with it. And what happened was the greatest pain I could ever imagine, but, and it was amazing that I didn't wake up, experiencing the greatest pain you could ever imagine, but only for 1 second. Only for 1 second. Because the next second was the feeling of splintering into like champagne bubbles, into a gazillion, so splintering is not a good word, but like, exploding into a gazillion champagne bubbles. And it was totally ecstatic. It was such an amazing feeling. So that also showed me um, that is what being shot in the heart, that's what that would feel like. That kind of a death. So, okay, yeah. The expansion on the other side is the pull, and it goes compressed into the Planck, which is called the Planck threshold, because we cannot measure. We have no way of measuring any further than that. That's like the smallest particle. But of course, the universe, what we do know, the principle of life and the universe is infinity. So, and it has to be, because it comes out on the other side, but then it flows into a greater torus. It makes its way into the next greater torus. Okay, now I'm getting ahead of myself, and I have to stick to just what I wanted, what was coming through before, because I can't go into a further that hasn't come all the way through yet. That makes it too confusing. Okay, so heart orgasm, the heart field opening, 10% of humanity on an individual level, and these are then, there's then that pulse, like I felt in my bed when there was this pulse release, making space, 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 exactly. And that's going to send out, again, the chakras, to the different celestial bodies connected. And of course, they're all connected to each other. But then we have the specifics, which, and I don't know how that is, but the old, like Ayurvedic, traditional Chinese medicine, they know exactly, we used to know that how every celestial body and code, flavor, in, what is it? What are the themes? What are the properties? And they have a circuit flowing. So the planets in our solar system, stargates, are connected with stargates. They have a circuitry. They have an energy cord, an energy stream through the stargates into the Earth, and then through the Earth into our system, as we are a fractal of the Earth system. Okay, and so this is going to send waves to the sun. And this is not going to happen linearly all at the same time, these 10%, right? That it is a field that builds. It's a building field, and it's like once it's open, it's there. It's open. We went over the threshold, and now we are running these currents. It doesn't close. It's not going to close again, because there is not that force anymore, and it's not the time, and it's not it's not the story, it's not where we're at, that it's going to close down again. because now everything is also hosting and supporting, the earth is supporting this. So yeah, these waves are then going to feed back into the sun, building a momentum of waves, and that's going to that's going to bring the sun over her threshold, or his, whatever, its threshold. And then, we've already been getting it's this feedback loop, because we've been already getting all these solar waves, right, that have been bumping us up, that have been expanding us, that have been accelerating the spin of our particle in our reality here on Earth and in our DNA. And so it's that feedback loop. When that gathers a certain momentum, it's going to bring the sun over its threshold to make that sun orgasm. That's going to be the solar flash, and you can imagine then that is being fed to us, and what's going to happen is that, and this is why we don't have to be afraid, and this is what when I was getting this part, I'm like, okay, I have to make a video, and then that's the end of it. That's, oh my God, already 1 hour and 20. Okay, but that's going to be the last of it. So when the solar flash comes, those pulsing waves, those waves, that expansion, that feedback, it's going to then again create a greater opening in us, in bring us over the threshold, so to speak, but not all at once. Again, not linearly. What I got was, and of course, there's a whole anatomy and geometry to this where it could be explained. Um, um, Collectively, yes. Collectively, it will create a point of no return. It will create a shift, a collective shift for sure, because there's so many implications that come with that. So this is ecstasy, right? Remember I talked about ecstasy coming through the opening of the heart. And every single torus within our being that is flowing in the harmonic direction, that is flowing in the organic direction, which is coherent with the heart, which is in the soul flow, where that is not interrupted, where that is not being resisted, where that is not in the inversion, is going to accelerate. It's going to like be this acceleration. And so imagine, these, at the top of buildings, there are these rotational fans, and they kind of look like a torus, and they have these fans, right? And so imagine that thing spinning, and you have one that's slower spinning, but in the same direction. What's going to happen when you have a bigger one that comes close to this one, the smaller one that's slower? It's going to accelerate this one, yeah? So it doesn't matter how slow it is, as long as it's in the right way, so to speak. It's not inverted, it's organic. It's going to be accelerated. And this acceleration is like, it will feel completely natural. It will feel like love, and actually more peace is coming in, because the acceleration of spin, the higher the spin, the more peaceful, and the slower everything slows down, because there's more space to behold, more space in the nervous system, more awakening, more being able to run data through the mind, being able to behold again. So the only thing is, when this wave comes, is that when the inverted spin hits on a very fast, much larger torus, then if this inverted spin cannot get with the program, as James Gilliland says, or get fractal or be toast, as Dan Winter says, yeah, if it's so stuck in its ways and it's not spinning left or right. That was actually falsely shown. So it cannot, because there's going to be a suction to suck it back into the light, back into the heart. But the thing is that then a detox also happens with this, because everything that has been pulled out, all that stolen energy, all that lost energy, that has been feeding the fallen, like, um, the fallen ones, yeah, and also you know, um, the demonic beings that come and feed off of where we have holes in our aura, they're going to lose their food, so they're going to dissolve. Their existence will dissolve. So all of that, and that's the unconscious. Um, it's going to dissolve. And the only thing that will happen, so it's just all healing. That's basically, and literally what I got was that it's the grace of God. That is the grace of God. And also the tsunami wave is the grace of God. And also, on an individual level, when our heart opens to a certain degree, and then a shift, and then something happens, what comes in? It's the grace of God. And this happens, this can happen in phases, and we have had the feeling in the past that when we maybe have had an experience of this kind of opening, that, like I had that kind of non-induced, the grace of God came, and this is another experience that I'm referring to, where I was in a breath workshop, and I was like so wanting to, and it was called the meltdown process, and I just didn't get it, and I was so wanting to get it. And then came the grace of God, where the person who was like holding space for me, the facilitator, all of a sudden he started channeling, and it was like unlocking, was the right code for me to hear, unlocking, and then all of a sudden this complete opening happened. And yeah, I'm not, it's just, I need to get, don't want to make this too long, but that was home. Then I was back home, and yeah, it was no mind, what they call in the Buddhism, no mind, and just oneness with all, and just knowing, and just the most wonderful feeling you could ever imagine. But it wasn't an emotion, it was total peace and total space and total, just, I can't even call it bliss, but it's like everything, I, I would want to stay there forever in that kind of being, and tears were just running down my eyes here. There was no I, there was no thought. And as the mind was then, the conditioned mind starting to come in again, the first thought or something, so that's reflection, it weaned, it started to close down again. Um, and the thing is that these are the waves that have been, the opening, but then it's not like that closed down. That experience was there. However, there was so much more. And when this happens with chemicals, then it has to shut down again, because it's not organic anyways. And you even created some backlog because you didn't earn it. So you have to, like, retrograde, you have to even go back and have more to look at even before you can get to the organic. That's also what happened to me, before you can get to the organic experience of something like that, back to truth of yourself as all that is. And but what's happening now at the same time is that the closure, is not anymore. Oh man, there's more to say. The closure is not going to happen anymore, because after opening, because That's over. It's now the time of ascension. We're all going into a higher dimension, fifth dimension. Okay, I'm getting now for the repeated time that I need to stop, take a break, and come back to this because there is some more valuable pieces that want to be unpacked, but it's already so late. So in the next video.